Listen to me carefully. This message is issued by the Emergency Coordination Center. Please listen closely and follow the instructions I'm about to give you. This is not a drill, and I can barely believe what I'm about to tell you. You need to understand something. What I'm about to share with you, these are real reports from real people in your neighborhoods. People who thought they were safe in their own homes. People who trusted what they saw with their own eyes. We've been receiving reports for the past 72 hours about encounters with what witnesses describe as a figure that appears to be watching from dark spaces. But that's not the disturbing part. The disturbing part is that this figure looks like someone you know, someone you trust, someone you love, until you look closer. It started 3 nights ago on Granger Hill. Tom and Lisa Brenner, retired school teachers who've lived on that street for 38 years, called 911 at 2:47 a.m. They reported seeing someone standing behind their trash bins. Tom initially thought it was a prank, maybe neighborhood kids getting into mischief. But when he turned on the porch light for a better look, he saw something that made his blood run cold. The figure was wearing his face. Not similar to his face. His exact face, down to the scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood accident. But when Lisa looked out the window, she saw her own reflection staring back from that same spot. The thing was somehow showing each of them their own appearance, like it was cycling through options, trying to decide which one fit better. Emergency dispatcher Emily Walsh took that call. She's worked the overnight shift for 6 years, heard everything from domestic disputes to false alarm burglars. But something in Tom's voice that night made her skin crawl. She later told investigators that she could hear Lisa whispering in the background. "It's smiling too wide. People can't smile that wide." When officers arrived 20 minutes later, they found nothing unusual. Just an elderly couple, clearly shaken, pointing at an empty spot behind some garbage cans. The responding officers filed a standard report and moved on. They had no way of knowing that this was just the beginning. The next night, we received 17 more calls. 17 separate households, all reporting the same basic phenomenon. A figure watching them from dark spaces, wearing familiar faces. But the faces weren't random. Each person saw someone specific, a deceased relative, an estranged family member, or, most disturbing of all, themselves. Eleanor Hartley lives alone on Pine Street. At 83, she's what neighbors politely call eccentric. So when she called 911 claiming her dead grandson was crawling out of her bathroom mirror, the first responders weren't exactly rushing to investigate. But Eleanor's call that night has since become part of official training material for emergency dispatchers because what she described defied every rational explanation. She said she was brushing her teeth before bed when she noticed movement in the mirror behind her. Her grandson, Henry, appeared in the reflection, standing in her hallway. Henry died 4 years ago in a car accident. But there he was, smiling at her through the glass. Eleanor turned around. The hallway was empty. When she looked back at the mirror, Henry was closer, much closer. And according to Eleanor, he was speaking, though his mouth wasn't moving in sync with the words. "Grandma," the thing said, "can you let me out? I've been waiting so long to come home." Eleanor backed away from the mirror, but the reflection stayed where it was. Henry's image reached toward the glass from the inside, pressing his palm against the surface. That's when Eleanor noticed the most horrifying detail. The hand pressing against the mirror was creating ripples, like the glass was made of water. She ran to her bedroom and called 911. While she was on the phone with dispatch, she heard her bathroom door creak open. Heavy footsteps walked down her hallway, the same measured pace Henry used when he'd visit as a child, trying not to wake her when he'd sneak to the kitchen for midnight snacks. When officers arrived, they found Eleanor barricaded in her bedroom, pushing furniture against the door. The bathroom mirror was shattered into hundreds of pieces, scattered across the floor like teeth. Eleanor had wrapped her hands in towels and punched through the glass herself. When asked why, she just kept repeating, It left the glass, but it didn't leave the room. But the most chilling incident happened the following night at the Westfield Industrial Complex. Jake Monroe, the night security guard, is a former Marine with 18 years of military experience. He's not the type to spook easily, but his final security report, filed just before his disappearance, reads like something from a nightmare. Jake had been monitoring the security cameras when he noticed movement on camera 7, which covers the loading dock. At first, it looked like a maintenance worker doing late-night repairs. Nothing unusual, but something about the figure's posture bothered him. The person was standing perfectly still, staring directly into the camera lens. Jake decided to investigate. He grabbed his flashlight and radio and headed to the loading dock. When he arrived, the area was empty. But when he radioed back to the security office to check the camera feed, the figure was still there on the monitor, standing in the exact spot where Jake was now positioned. That's when Jake realized the truth that would haunt his final hours. The figure on the camera was wearing his uniform, his exact uniform, down to the coffee stain on the left pocket from that morning's breakfast. But Jake was wearing that same uniform. The thing in the camera was perfectly mimicking his appearance in real time. Jake returned to the security office and began reviewing footage from earlier in the night. What he found sent him into a paranoid spiral that lasted until his disappearance 6 hours later. The figure had been appearing on different cameras throughout the building for weeks, always wearing the face of whoever was watching the monitors. When the day shift guard reviewed footage, it looked like him. When Jake watched, it looked like Jake. His final log entry, written in increasingly erratic handwriting, simply reads, "It's choosing who to look like, and it's getting better. Every night it looks more real. I think it's learning from us." You need to understand the pattern we've identified. This phenomenon follows predictable stages, and recognizing them might save your life. Stage 1 is restlessness. Your pets will sense it first. Dogs begin pacing near windows, hackles raised, growling at empty spaces. Cats hide in closets and refuse to come out. Birds stop singing. If you have security cameras or Ring doorbells, you might notice glitches in the footage. Brief moments where the image seems to stutter or duplicate. Stage 2 is observation. You'll catch glimpses of movement in your peripheral vision. Shadows that seem slightly too long or moving against the light source. You might see someone you know standing in places they shouldn't be. Your backyard at 3 a.m., across the street when they live 3 states away, or reflected in windows when they're not actually there. Stage 3 is interaction. The figure will attempt to get your attention. It might wave, knock on windows, or call your name in a voice you recognize. This is the most dangerous stage because the natural human response is to investigate or respond. Don't. Under no circumstances should you acknowledge its presence or attempt to communicate. The final stage is intrusion. The figure will try to enter your space using familiar faces and voices. It might appear as a family member claiming to be locked out, a neighbor asking for help, or even emergency personnel requesting entry. It has learned to mimic distress calls, to sound hurt or frightened. But remember, anyone legitimate will understand if you verify their identity through other means first. Rachel Harper learned this the hard way. She lives on Maple Street with her 8-year-old son, David. 2 nights ago, she heard David talking to someone in his bedroom around midnight. When she went to check on him, she found him sitting up in bed, having a conversation with empty air. "Who are you talking to, sweetheart?" she asked. David looked at her with confusion. "Mommy, you're right there," he said, pointing to the corner of his room. "You're tucking me in." Rachel felt ice-cold fear wash over her. She was standing in the doorway. There was no one else in the room, but David was clearly seeing something, someone, that looked exactly like her. "Honey, that's not Mommy," she whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Mommy is right here by the door." David's eyes went wide with terror. "Then who has been putting me to bed every night?" Rachel immediately grabbed David and took him to her bedroom, where they've been sleeping together ever since. But David keeps insisting that sometimes there are two mommies in the house, one during the day and a different one at night. The night mommy, he says, smells like old water and her eyes don't blink the right way. Detective Mason Holloway was assigned to investigate the Granger Hill incident. With 18 years on the force, he'd seen everything from domestic violence to drug-related homicides. He approached this case with his typical methodical skepticism. That skepticism lasted exactly 47 minutes. While interviewing the Brenners, Detective Holloway noticed something unusual about their Ring doorbell footage. The timestamp showed the figure appearing at 2:47 a.m., exactly when the 911 call was placed. But when he slowed down the footage frame by frame, he discovered something that made his hands shake. The figure wasn't casting a shadow. Despite standing directly under a streetlight, it threw no shadow on the ground. But more disturbing was what happened at timestamp 2:48:23. The figure turned to look directly at the camera, and for one frame, just one single frame, its face was a perfect composite of both Tom and Lisa's features, blended together like a photograph double exposure. Detective Holloway tried to investigate further, but every lead went nowhere. Security footage from neighboring houses showed nothing. Physical evidence was non-existent. But the deeper he dug, the more reports he found going back months, all dismissed as pranks or mental health episodes. His final voicemail to dispatch, left at 3:22 a.m. last Tuesday, was barely coherent. "It's not a person. I don't care what the department says. It was watching me from my own reflection in the car window, and it knew I saw it. It waved at me with my own hand. I'm not going back up that hill. I'm not going anywhere it might be watching." Detective Holloway hasn't reported for duty since that night. His car was found in his driveway, keys still in the ignition, driver's door open. His neighbors report seeing him working in his garden every morning, but when they try to talk to him, he doesn't respond. He just keeps digging holes and filling them back up, over and over. If you encounter this phenomenon, here's what you need to do. First, do not engage. Do not make eye contact. Do not speak to it. Do not acknowledge its presence in any way. Interaction seems to strengthen its ability to mimic and pursue. Second, secure your home immediately. Close all blinds and curtains. The entity appears to use reflective surfaces as observation points. This includes mirrors, television screens, computer monitors, and even still water. Cover or remove these items if possible. Third, verify the identity of anyone seeking entry to your home, even if they appear to be family members or emergency personnel. Ask questions only the real person would know. Call them on their personal phone while they're standing at your door. Real people will understand your caution. The entity will become agitated and may reveal its true nature when properly challenged. Fourth, document everything, but do not review the footage alone. Multiple witnesses have reported that the entity appears different depending on who is watching the recordings. What looks normal to one person appears horrifying to another. We've attempted conventional interventions. Police searches have yielded nothing. Animal control found no wildlife in the reported areas. Even the military specialists we consulted have no explanation for the phenomenon. Every attempt to capture or confront the entity directly has resulted in either equipment failure or the disappearance of the personnel involved. The pattern is spreading. What started as isolated incidents on Granger Hill has now been reported across 17 neighborhoods in our county. Emergency services are overwhelmed with calls, but we cannot provide the kind of help people expect because this threat operates outside the boundaries of normal emergency response. Dr. Amanda Pierce from the CDC was brought in to rule out environmental contamination or mass psychological episodes. Her initial assessment suggested we were dealing with a form of shared hysteria, possibly triggered by contaminated water supplies or air quality issues. But Dr. Pierce's final report, submitted just 12 hours ago, contained a single line that has forced us to issue this emergency broadcast. It's choosing who to look like, and it's getting better. The most recent incident occurred just 6 hours ago. A family of 4 on Elmwood Drive reported that their home security system showed them having dinner together at the exact same time they were calling 911 from their locked car in their driveway. The footage shows perfect replicas of the family going about their normal evening routine inside the house. But the real family had been hiding in their car for 3 hours, too terrified to go inside. When officers arrived to investigate, they found the house empty. But the security system continued recording the phantom family for another 2 hours. The footage shows them brushing teeth, getting ready for bed, and tucking the children in for the night. All normal activities, except for one detail that has every law enforcement officer in the county on edge. Every few minutes, all 4 figures would simultaneously stop what they were doing and stare directly into the security cameras as if they knew they were being watched. This broadcast will repeat every hour until further notice. Stay in groups when possible. Trust your instincts if something feels wrong about a familiar person's behavior. And remember, if you see something watching you from the dark that looks like someone you know, do not approach it. Do not let it inside. Do not trust what your eyes are telling you, because the thing wearing familiar faces is not the person you think you recognize. And every time someone makes that mistake, it learns a little more about how to be human. We'll continue monitoring the situation and provide updates as they become available. For now, stay inside, stay alert, and remember, the person you're looking at might not be the person looking back.